Hey, today we are reacting to scary animation videos. So let's do this.
This happened about 5 years ago when I was 21. Me and my friend Seth got into this app which showed ghosts. We'd go out ghost hunting, but nothing much would happen. Sometimes a dot would appear on one of our phones and it would say random words. We would ask, "How did you die?" and stuff like that. And sometimes the answers lined up, but it was
she
mostly
is
random.
suspicious.
One night, around 2 a.m., Seth suggested going to the cemetery to see if the app picked anything up. I was hesitant, but I nervously agreed. We started making our way through the neighborhood towards the cemetery. It was weird as the streets are normally lined with cars, but they were empty on this night. We walked down the middle of the road with the app running, but it wasn't picking anything up. We finally made it to the cemetery, which was a small, family-owned one where they only buried their own. Seth went up to the gate and started shouting, hoping to get a response on the app, but nothing happened. I was standing in the road, feeling unsettled, when Seth starts yelling,
Is that all you've got?
I told him to stop disrespecting the dead
You
and
can
we should
hear it,
leave.
but I can't.
He tried being funny, saying,
You guys
I'll
can
make
hear
him
it too.
show up.
Oh, well,
He jumped the gate and started stomping on the graves while screaming.
Oh, he's making fun of the ghost.
All of a sudden, our phone said something at the same
Don't ever
time.
mess with ghosts.
I looked down at my phone and it was there.
Ruin your life.
We both just stood there, looking at each other when 10 or so red dots appeared on the radar, and then it said it again. When I looked back up from my phone, Seth was next to me. He said,
We have
We're
got
live
to go.
streaming.
as soon as I said that, we could hear the street lights turning off one by one from the top of the street, getting closer to us.
Because
We
my
took off running as fast as we could. We got about halfway into the neighborhood before running out of breath and having to stop. I felt like I was going to throw up from being scared and winded.
That's why I came
and I heard
over
my phone
here
say
because I don't
something.
want to hear it.
It was muffled,
them
but I
fighting and
knew what it said.
arguing.
Being too scared to look at my phone, I looked at Seth, who looked terrified. He nodded at me to get my phone out, so I slowly pulled it out, and it said my name across the top.
Oh, that
I
has to
turned
be
my
my
phone off and
favorite.
said,
After that, you gotta get the
This,
crap out of
I'm
there.
done.
We should make a
We made
video
our
where
way
we
back to
download
my
the
house
app
and
on
had
my
a cigarette to
phone.
calm down.
Yes.
We were
We will
talking
do
about
that.
what just
And then you
happened,
can
almost
leave
not
it
believing it,
on that.
when I heard my phone
How many
again.
likes, and then we'll do that.
This time, it was my
How
sister's
many
name.
likes? Let's see.
We just
Probably-
stood there, frozen, not saying a word, when it went off again and said
We
my
can do
brother's name.
500 likes.
I took my phone
5
out,
likes.
turned it on, and
Yeah,
deleted the app.
5 likes we will do.
I asked Seth to stay the night, but he refused. I can't blame him. When I finally got to sleep that night, I dreamt a muffled voice repeating a word over and over. I started to wake up and the words became
Censor
clearer.
that out.
My phone was off, with the battery out. But when I turned it over, it was lit up with the app running. It had a red dot about 6 feet from me, still repeating.
Oh my god. Right. Oh crap, get out of there, get out. Get out. Someone's having a bad hair day. Oh yeah. And bad eyes too. And bad feet. Dang. Crusty.
I woke up the next morning and went to the bathroom. I had a razor-thin cut from my left shoulder to my right hip. I don't know what happened that night, and nothing has happened to me since.
No.
Needless to
Why?
say, I don't mess with that kind of stuff anymore.
Why even do that? That's so stupid. I mean, like, why would he even? Don't mess with ghosts. Play that map. We will probably do that. I know. And then we just see a ghost 1 feet away from us.
Over the weekend, about 15 coworkers and myself had our company trip to the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, known for being Stephen King's inspiration for The Shining. We took an 8 p.m. ghost tour where we joined about 15 other people to get guided around the property and told stories about its history and creepy things that are said to have happened. We were told to take a lot of pictures, I'm sure to try and capture orbs or ghosts. Many green orbs were caught in pictures, but I don't think anything is as creepy as this photo taken by my coworker. A little girl in a hot pink dress who was definitely not on our tour. And apparently, years ago, a young girl who was 12 to 13 by the name of Lucy
She looks
was
like
squatting
Dora.
in the
Lucy
basement
looks
of the
like Dora.
concert hall, which
Wait,
is where this
I'm
photo
getting
was taken. And she was discovered upon plans to begin some
Because
construction.
that same
She
guy
was
in the
forced to
picture
leave, and
was
the
the
night got
same
below
picture
freezing.
down.
So she froze to death. Everyone on my tour has vouched that this girl was not on our tour.
Eyes.
I mean, who wouldn't remember someone wearing hot pink? The man pictured is our tour guide. No one would have been in front of
There
him.
they are.
I am convinced that this is the ghost of Lucy. Just one more added note, though I doubt anyone would believe me. But there was only one time throughout the tour where I felt any strange energy or feeling. And it was right there, headed down to the basement of the concert hall.
That was short. Dad? Are you kidding me?
What's that? Plain white sauce? Plain white sauce makes your teeth go grey.
Skip it. Skip it. What is this? Okay, now here's the animation. Does he know?
I could feel that we were going very fast. It was a Tuesday night when I was turning in my last essay for history. I left it to the last minute and the teacher actually made me complete it before I could go home. I hated my teacher for that.
Paper and stay
Around 8 p.m., I had finished that goddamn essay and was walking home. The rain had stopped and there was a beautiful sunset. Suddenly, I noticed something. There was a red 2016 Toyota Camry right
Kidnapping horror
behind me.
story.
I got goosebumps thinking it was following me. I didn't look back and started walking in my apartment's direction. I wanted to go to a busy road to feel safer. Just then, the car sped up, stopping right next to me. A middle-aged man asked me where I was headed and suggested to drop me off. I said no thanks, but the man wouldn't leave and insisted. I wanted to tell the man to just fuck off, but I took off running instead. I heard a loud noise and at the same time felt something I can only describe as a sharp vibration hitting my flesh.
Run!
I fell to the ground not knowing what happened.
Run!
Out of
Run,
adrenaline,
boy.
I was about to get up and run again as I felt a heavy arm grab me by the mouth.
He got shot.
Then the pain
Turned
set
out for
in.
what?
I realized that I was shot.
Oh crap.
There was another man next
I
to
would
him
hate
that
to
searched
get
my
shot.
pockets. He grabbed my phone and threw it on the ground as he tied my legs and taped my mouth. They quickly put me into the trunk of their car and then started driving. I could feel that we were going very fast, and I'm sure that we
Fun
hadn't stopped
fact,
at all for a good 30 minutes.
If I had tape over my
I was
mouth, I
feeling
would
my
die
blood
because I
soaking
cannot
into my
breathe through my
shirt,
nose.
which scared me the most. I was certain that I was going to die. I was thinking about my parents and what they would feel when they
I would be
heard that I
dead
was
right
missing.
now.
Then the car came to a stop. By some
'Cause
miracle,
I'm
I heard a
shot.
police officer asking for
Looking at
IDs
me.
and driver's licenses. I wanted to yell for help,
What's that
but
shirt
nothing
he's
came out.
wearing?
Just then, I heard 3 to 4 gunshots. I heard another cop yelling.
Man down! Man down! Shots fired!
I was begging the cop to find me. Then I heard the cop searching the car. I was feeling joy as my pain was growing worse. Seconds felt like hours. The officer then opened the car's trunk and suddenly started firing at me out of a fight or flight response. Thankfully, the bullets missed. The officer quickly caught up to the fact that I was kidnapped and injured.
Stupid idiot, what are
He
you gonna
called
do?
for
Just shoot
backup
the freaking
immediately.
trunk?
And it arrived in minutes.
Idiot.
They
At
placed
least
the injured
tase if
officer
there's
onto
something
a
back there
gurney
first
and drove
then
off in an
check.
ambulance.
Everyone didn't back
Finally, when the
Pretty
scene
tough
was
shit.
safe, they called another ambulance for me.
If so, that family
I
was
woke up in the
sued.
hospital. The news
the
media
cop.
was everywhere. I was fine after a few days, but later learned that the officer that was shot didn't make it. I don't know if those men are still alive or rotting away in a prison for killing an officer.
Llama News.
I don't want to
Officer
know
dead
what
shooter.
would have happened
7-Eleven.
if those
Yeah,
officers
7-Eleven.
hadn't stopped the car.
Make a wish. But they actually done a good job on that.
See, they make really good animations.
Man, this story's starting already. Power went out.
The crap.
And there's a guy. A bus stop horror story. Ooh.
Ooh, a bus stop.
Oh wait,
This
I
happened when I
think
was
I've
17
seen
years
this.
old.
Yeah.
I would go to the gym 3 to 4
But
times a
this one
week and
is
ride the
just
bus home.
scary.
It was a Sunday
Well, it's
and I
not
had just
that
missed my
scary,
bus,
but
so I had to wait longer for another one.
Actually,
I would have called my
scary at all.
parents, but they were out for the evening, and taxis charged more, so I decided to sit and wait in the bus shelter. It was a cold night, and snow had just started peppering the ground. My bus was taking longer than usual, so I got my phone out and listened to some music. Almost an hour had passed. It was freezing and I hadn't
wonder if
seen
these are
anyone at
true.
all. That was until I noticed something out of the corner of my eye.
What did he
It was a
notice?
creepy guy dressed in thick layers of
Get the
clothing,
crap out of there.
walking
Why are you
slowly
still
towards
there?
me.
Where'd he go?
I knew staring at him would draw more attention, so I just focused on my phone. He sat down at the other end of the shelter and just stared at me. There was something off about him. He seemed like he was either drunk or on drugs. He then asked,
When is the bus due?
I took out my earphones and said, I think it's delayed, because of the snow. He stared at me for a while, then started mumbling to himself. He was really starting to creep me out, so I pretended to be on my phone. After a couple of minutes, I took another look. He'd moved closer to me. I looked away for a
Get out of
second
there.
and heard the
He's
sound
moving
of him
closer
sliding
to
even
me.
closer.
See?
I turned to him and said, You okay there?
And then he takes
He
him
stared at
out.
me with glossy eyes, lifted his arm and leaned towards me.
What the
Immediately,
crap?
I grabbed my bag and
He-
ran as
he
he
just
fell to the
fell?
ground. I ran down the road trying my hardest not to look back. I kept going until I got to the next bus stop.
And then he rolled
I
out
turned
his
around to
bag.
check to see if he was there. He was gone, so I went to
And
sit
then he's
down.
not there.
Feeling relieved, I rested my head on the back of
And
the
then-
glass and waited for the
No.
bus.
And then he's there.
No.
I jolted and turned around to see the same guy staring at me through the glass.
What the hell is wrong with you?
Oh, it just
Yeah.
cussed.
Then he started walking around the shelter towards
And then
me.
he comes back.
I'm warning you, stay
And then
back.
he punches
I
the
yelled
crap
in
out of
panic
him.
as I was backing
Watch.
up. I wanted to run, but I left my
Watch.
bag in the shelter and I couldn't leave without it. Suddenly, the man leaped at me and I quickly moved out of the way.
Ooh,
He
that
fell
looks-
to the ground
I
face
know.
first.
It's so
I
scary.
froze in shock,
And
then noticed the
watch,
blood
watch.
coming from his face.
Oh
I
crap.
tried to get a response out of him, but nothing worked. I called the police and paramedics and they arrived shortly after. I told them what had happened and they told me that the guy was on prescription drugs. They found a photo in his wallet of him and his son. The boy looked just like me, so we assumed he thought I was him. I later learned that he had lost his son in a custody battle and went off the rails. He was taken away for treatment, and that was the last I saw of him.
Wait, so
I got my
now-
driver's license shortly after,
This is where
and
he-
have never been on a bus
Wait,
since.
This is the
this
same
is still the same. Wait. Oh my
What
gosh,
the
I
crap?
didn't see
What the
that
crap?
part.
What was that?
Wait, it's right here.
I'll pause it when I see it.
A response out of him, but nothing worked.
Well,
I called the
it's just
police
the
and
way he's
paramedics and they
driving
arrived
home.
shortly after.
He's alive.
I told them what had happened and they told me that the guy was on prescription drugs.
When he's driving
They found a
home.
photo in his wallet of him and his son. The boy looked just like me, so we assumed he thought I was him.
Wait,
I later learned that he had lost
Wait.
his son in a custody battle and went off the rails. He was taken away for treatment, and that was the last I saw of him.
now pause it.
I got my
Pause
driver's license shortly after, and have never been on a bus.
it. Pause. See?
Oh,
It's here.
crap!
Get
the crap out of here.
He's still alive. He's still alive. I
Yes.
told you. I told you, brother. He's still alive. Oh my gosh.
Why even do that? Creepy Christmas time story.
Wait.
It was
I didn't
November
have
of
to say
2006.
this. No.
Let me
I was a
scream into the
16-year-old kid living in the town of Altoona, Iowa. I went to bed early one night because I had to work the early shift at McDonald's. As I slept, I had a dream that I was running through downtown Des Moines, but I wasn't on a jog. I was running from something. As I ran around the corner of a building, I came face to face with my pursuer. A tall man wearing a trench coat and a top hat stood in front of me. The only thing visible of his face was his eyes. They were abnormally large with black pupils, and it looked at me as if it wanted something. After what felt like hours, he reached out his bony hand, as if he wanted me to go with him. I woke up violently from my dream, and after catching my breath, I peered around my room to see if I was safe.
That was the most crazy.
As I stood up from my bed, I noticed that I could see my breath.
No reason.
Feeling confused, I checked my window. It was latched shut. I then walked over and checked my vent. I could still feel warm air coming from it. As I sat back down on my bed, I tried to figure out what exactly was going on.
Something happened?
That's when the figure from my dream appeared at the foot of my bed.
Crap! Oh no.
I scrambled back to my headboard.
No!
What do you want?
That is
I
scaring
asked,
me.
trying to hide the shakiness in my voice.
Headbutts epically.
With the same bony finger, it pointed at me.
Headbutts
Growing up in a religious
kick
home,
him,
I believed what I was
punch him,
looking at was a
grab the
demon.
chair, hit him,
I told the creature to
push
leave.
him out the window.
It just waved its finger
Get
at
him
me,
out.
and with
Scream
a
for
low
your
voice,
parents.
it spoke to me.
Never leave.
Look at his teeth.
Always here.
The creature then screamed loudly and disappeared.
No.
A feeling of nausea came
That
over
was
me, and I vomited on my floor.
What
The last thing I
crap?
remember was cleaning myself up and waking up to my alarm. It's been about a
If
month
this
since
ever
I had
happened to
seen
me,
the
I
top
would-
hat wearing man in
I
my
would
bedroom.
move to a different country.
The
I
Christmas
would be
season
out.
was in full effect. My
My
parents
whole
weren't home
life
because
is
they got
just-
invited to some kind of
Actually,
event. So it was
It
only
would
me and
never
my 3
leave
sisters at home.
because also it said
I had to wake
never
up early
leave.
in
I
the
was
morning
just
for
saying.
work, so I decided to go to sleep.
I think it's talking
I
about the
rested my
house.
head on my pillow
I would go
and
live in a
closed my
church
eyes.
and
Not
I
even
would
30
just
seconds
stay
passed until my sisters
in
burst
a
into my room
bathtub
and started
of
singing
holy water.
obnoxious songs. This of course made me very angry, but I thought if I ignored them that they would leave me alone. This was not the
He looks like
case.
so annoyed.
As I pulled the blankets over
He's
my
probably gonna
head,
lose his mind.
I started to feel the same cold feeling that I had in November.
No.
As the obnoxious singing
He's
subsided,
been possessed.
I lowered the blanket below
He's
my
insane.
eyes and saw the man standing in the corner of my room.
No.
In one swift motion, he charged towards me, and I blacked
Oh
out.
no. No.
When I
no,
finally came to,
no.
I found that my sisters had locked themselves inside the
The crap?
bathroom. As I knocked on the door, they told me to go away. I asked them what happened, and all they could say was Mom and Dad were on their way home. I looked down and saw that my hand was slightly bloody. Holes were in the bathroom door, and a broom was sticking out of the wall.
The
I then
crap?
walked
Why
into
is
the
it- it's
living
like-
room and found that there were knives stuck into the wall as well. The same wave of nausea passed over me, just like in November, and I threw up again. As I was cleaning up, my parents walked through the door.
Where's the parents? They
My
just
father
leave their-
immediately walked over to me and gave me a good beating. Then he sent me to my room. I went to bed crying, not from the beating. I was crying because of the confusion. I had no idea what was going on. The next morning, my sisters reluctantly sat next to me and told me what had happened.
Well,
They said I got angry and chased them down and tried to hurt them. They said my eyes were red to the point where they thought I was bleeding from them. They said I sounded like a different person. In 2011, that was the last time I saw the top hat wearing man. I just moved into a new apartment, and after a long, stressful day of unpacking, I took a shower and got ready for bed. As I started to
this
drift
is
off,
terrifying.
I could
think
feel
this
that
is
cold
one of the
feeling again.
scariest. I know.
I lifted my head and saw the man standing in front of me.
Why is he sleeping in his room?
The man's
anymore?
eyes were
Like,
red now,
Why is he even in
with
his
a low
house? Why didn't
voice,
he tell his family?
just like on that November night. It looked at me and said,
Oh,
Never leave. Always here.
oh my God, the crap. And Vacation Story 3. With some Japanese balloons. And
During
a
my
pink
holiday, I
cloud.
spent about 3 weeks in
Isn't this
Japan.
about the
I arrived
man?
pretty late, so I couldn't check into the hotel that I initially booked, so I booked the cheapest hotel that I could find nearby. Aesthetically, it was
Because
quite
I've
nice,
seen this one
but it
before.
did have easy access to the building, meaning anyone could come in and go to any room as they please. Plus, there was no security in sight. After arriving in my room, I ordered some food and watched some TV. I was still pretty jet-lagged from the flight, so I started to get ready for bed. As I was falling asleep, I felt the urge to double-check the door just to see if it was locked.
Yes, double
I
check
didn't
the
think
door.
anything was going to happen, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. About 5 minutes
then
after I
watch,
checked the door, I heard
watch.
footsteps outside. Initially, I thought it was someone
Look
leaving their
at
room, but the
the
footsteps
light.
started to pick up speed. The sounds started getting louder and louder, and I started to freak out a little. All of a sudden, the sound stopped. I looked at the light shining through the bottom of my door, and there was a shadow of a person. At first, I thought it was room service, but it was too late for that. Or maybe it was some drunk idiot who was at the wrong room. As soon as I switched my light on, the shadow disappeared. I was confused, but I reluctantly went back to bed. That's when I suddenly heard scratching coming from my door, so I immediately turned my light on and shouted, "Who's there?" After a moment of silence, I heard the footsteps slowly fade away. At this point, I was thinking it could be some kids messing around, so I got up, opened the door, and peeked my head outside. I glanced in both directions down the dark and slim hallways. That's when my heart stopped. A man emerged from the darkness and ran erratically towards me. His face was contorted as he screamed, and I could see he was holding a knife in his right hand. As he got closer, I could see him more clearly. He had disgusting long, dirty hair, his clothes were ripped, and he had cuts and bruises all over. I quickly slammed my door and pressed against it, praying that the man would just go away. After what felt like hours, I finally gathered my courage and looked through the peephole. He was gone.
And then watch.
I let out a sigh of relief and checked the peephole again. My heart started pumping faster than ever before. He was right in front of the door. He was wearing a maniacal smile on his face, and all of a sudden he raised his knife and yelled, "I'm gonna fucking kill you!" I jumped back and kept my eyes locked on the bottom of the door as I backed up to my bed. I grabbed my phone and started dialing the police. As I raised the phone to my ear, I saw that the shadow was gone. When the police arrived, I tried to explain what happened, and they checked the security cameras. They almost immediately recognized the man. He had been doing this to people for a while now, and the police had been trying to track him down for months. After a long night of no sleep, I finally arrived at the right hotel that I had booked initially in Tokyo. That creepy guy was still on my mind, but I thought the chances of him being here were pretty slim, so I didn't bother locking my door that night. At 12:05 a.m., I woke up to a big bang next to me. I turned around to see the same guy passed out on the floor, with a knife in hand. I was in shock. How did he find me? I quickly ran out of the room and locked him inside. The cops came and he was finally arrested. Let's just say I'm always going to be locking my doors from now on.
And then I'm sober. Yeah, just don't. Always lock your door. That's the lesson. Crap. Oh yes, I've seen.
I was 26 years old, and I was unemployed.
This is gonna
Feeling
happen
unfulfilled by the
one that
monotony
we're
of a
gonna
job
have to do.
life, I decided I would try my hand at working from home. So my days and nights comprised me of surfing the internet for any jobs I could get. I was a big procrastinator, so more often than not I'd stray away and waste time doing other things. One day, I came across...
Go shut the door and lock it. What door? your door, bro. What if something's in there, like that metal thing? No, like the metal thing right here. Something came from in here. Oh, yeah. I heard like a metal thing. What if it's in there? Look at this stuff. Wait. No.
Mommy, damn. That's actually pretty.
That is not mine.
Yeah.
Wait, get your headphones, isn't it your turn?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is the last one that we're gonna have to do because of storage. Wait, scoot up.
Cross-talk about the deep web while on Reddit. I felt amused by the people talking about it as if it was something so scary, and decided I'd look into it. It was stupid of me to go on it in the first place, but I made it even sillier by deciding to check it out late at night. It was about 2 a.m. and I came across a website where you could chat with someone anonymously. The person I got was a woman. She was in her early 20s and very pretty. She sat with her head in her hands, looking playful into the webcam while batting her eyes.
I just heard a clown horn.
I had no desire to turn my camera on and started our chat, thinking that while I didn't come across anything scary, I could befriend this pretty girl. It sounded like a better deal anyway. She told me to turn the camera on, but I ignored that request and tried to get her to talk. She finally did after some prodding, but I noticed how guarded she was. I also noticed how after every message I sent, her eyes would look off camera, either to her side or somewhere behind her computer. After a while, it started getting annoying, so I asked her if someone else was there with her.
I want to see you first.
She said. Up until now, I'd been chatting while she'd answered my questions verbally. I'm not that curious.
Don't be scared.
She said, laughing, this time looking behind the laptop again and making a face that seemed to indicate she was laughing at my expense, with someone else. This is getting boring. It feels like I'm not just talking to you.
That's because you're not. You're talking to all of us.
Who else is there?
Turn your camera on.
Oh, I thought the pieces of
Is
his
this a
hair
joke?
was like arms.
Turn it on.
Okay, I'll be leaving now.
Turn on the camera.
Her laughter was almost piercing by now.
Is this a joke?
There was nothing humorous about the situation, yet she threw her head back with riotous laughter.
What the crap?
I'd had enough and moved the cursor over to turn the chat box off.
She's
I saw the
asking you
cursor
to
had
turn on
jammed.
his camera.
The only thing that was working was the chat box, and I still had access to the keyboard.
Turn the camera
I
on
know something that's
screen.
like this.
Her gumdrop-filled voice was
Amigo.
louder than before, and I moved my gaze up to see her smiling toothfully at the camera. Her face still beautiful, but the smile completely fake.
Camera.
My computer's crashed. I can't see the screen. Sorry. I lied. I didn't want her to know I had no option but to chat. Her screen flashed before going blank. There was nothing there but a black screen. I felt relieved, thinking that at least I didn't need to talk to her while I tried to figure out what happened to the screen. Just then, a chat message popped up.
She already cussed.
Open the damn camera, you.
See?
The aggressiveness in the message frightened me.
See?
Now, the
Don't
fact that I couldn't
ever
see her
say that.
face while she typed this made me feel nervous. I didn't dare reply back, but then the cursor moved. I watched
Where's the camera
shell-shocked as the
button?
cursor twirled around the screen.
Open the camera now.
I still didn't make a move.
Open
There was
the
no
camera
way anything good
now.
would be waiting for me if I did what she
I knew
asked.
that she would do that.
The screen
because
began flickering, as if a virus was causing the computer to writhe in agony.
Do you want me to find you?
My heart raced. Could it be possible she knew where I was? I started typing. Please stop bothering me.
Then turn on the fucking camera.
By this point, I thought she was some kind of sadist
Turn on
and got
the
her kicks
freaking
by
camera.
scaring unassuming people in chat rooms. So I obliged and turned the webcam on. I saw my frightened face staring into the screen. Judging by my face, my attempts at looking tough were painfully unsuccessful. I asked around for the girl looking straight into the camera, telling her I did what she wanted and to stop hacking into my computer. There were several seconds of silence. I kept my stare directed to the little box that showed her camera feed, but it was pitch black. I motioned into the camera in confusion, feeling as if she was messing with me now. Then I saw another message.
Look here.
After a few
Look
seconds
here.
of staring at those words, I looked back at her camera, but my computer instantly
It's
malfunctioned,
your mom!
and I received another message.
Look here. Don't look up.
The chat was filled with nonsensical gibberish. She typed with such ferocious speed,
She
my
had her
screen whirled
computer.
away with her constant messages. I couldn't understand what was going on, but I didn't look up. My patience ran thin, and I wrote back, "What is this supposed to mean?" Her response came.
Minecraft.
I read only the letters in bold and shuddered. I looked back into her webcam and I fell back into my chair, my eyes widening. She was back there, only her face looked completely demented. She had a savage expression, devoid of emotion,
The crap, she
but
looks
her
like
eyes
she's
were
on
almost
something.
popping out of
She
their
got
sockets,
choked.
and she was huffing as if she had extreme amounts of pent-up rage. The way she looked directly into the camera made me feel she despised me with all of her being. There was no amusement there anymore. Her camera went blank again. Then the chat popped up. My heart stopped again. For a split second, there had been the same blackness, only for the lights to come back on.
And then
She wasn't alone anymore. There was a man
the crap
next to
is
her
that?
with a black mask on. He made no
Plague doctor?
movements other
Some
than
man
look
with
into
the
the camera like the girl. The
It
girl's
has
neck
to
creaked to
be-
her
Oh,
side.
crap!
It looked like it was causing her
Did her
pain,
neck break?
and then the lights went out
Yeah.
again. The
And then
chat
there's
resumed.
another man.
This time, I screamed in fright and fell off my chair. There was another man with them now. He was standing next to the girl with the original one on the other
He's
side.
having a great time.
This man had the same mask on, but his hands were grasping the girl's shoulders. Even with the subpar quality of the webcam, I could see the
He's gonna
force
see one
with
right
which the
behind
man
him, I
dug his
bet.
hands into the girl. It looked like
It's
he
not
could
gonna
rip her
be
in two.
there.
The girl,
That's
however,
just how these
had a
things
huge
work.
grin on her face. Her eyes were mad with glee, or so it looked. Her teeth were perfectly lined up as her mouth spread into that toothy
You watch
grin,
Naruto?
but I could see she was in pain.
I've seen
Even
some.
with the smallest sign of her smile fading,
Didn't you see
the
that
man
episode
clenched his
when,
hands even tighter than before, which made her smile even wider. All three of them were shaking, as if it was extremely cold where they were.
What is the matter? I mean, is somebody else here? Someone. Oh well, I paused it for this.
After a couple seconds, I realized they were shuddering, like trying to hold back laughter.
And then
What
there's a
are
third
you
one.
laughing at?
I yelled into the screen. They didn't answer, and continued to tremor with concealed hilarity.
What is so damn funny?
I bellowed. They stopped shaking. Within a couple seconds, the screen went black again.
Then
When
there's
it
a
turned
third
back
one.
on, the man no longer grasped the girl's shoulder. Neither
It's
was she
you.
smiling.
And then
All
look.
three pointed
and
into
then
the
look.
camera.
Look.
Upon a closer look,
I know
I
it.
understood
I know,
that they weren't
I
pointing
called
at
it.
me.
But it's
They
not gonna
were
be there when it
pointing
turns
behind
around.
me. I didn't need to
You'll
look
see it in his
back.
face
I
cam.
could see myself in the
It's gonna
webcam.
be like, oh
There
crap!
was someone peeking from behind me. It was another man in a mask. And according to what I saw in my webcam, he was with me in my room, right behind me. I turned around quickly, but saw nothing where I had seen him in the webcam. I turned back towards the screen and, to my bewilderment, saw a third man in the girl's chat box. It was the same man I had just seen standing in my room. Now, all three had their hands on the girl and were gripping tight. The girl wasn't laughing anymore. She had a look of utter
And
devastation.
then she
A
says,
tear
help.
was dropping from her
Help me,
eye,
my neck's gonna
but
break.
it wasn't
Or
just a
maybe
tear.
I'm-
It was
She
blood
will-
trickling
yeah,
down her
that's
eye
what I'm
socket.
saying next.
She then mouthed the words, "Help me," and the next second she screamed as if her lungs were being ripped off as the screen went black.
See,
I immediately got up and pulled the plug out of my computer and backed out of the room. For a couple seconds, I swear I heard her screams even though the computer was unplugged.
Yeah.
The room went quiet, but I was too devastated to stay there and ran out of my house despite it being 3 a.m.
On my
I
storage.
caught a cab and went over to my...
Let's say goodbye. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Thanks for...
That was all of the animations.
Yeah.
Today we are Asian people.
Yes, hashtag Asian.
Yes.
And please subscribe
Yes.
and like
Yes.
and
Now,
share.
after all that, I'm going to bed. Good night. Good night, Caleb.
It's 6:30.
I don't care. It's 6:30 or not, I'm still going to bed.
Yeah, he's going to bed.
And you have to go to bed too.
Okay.
Come on.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye.
See ya.
I'm going to choke him like the people did.
Bye.